Monica and I went to the Tower of London, which was the fortress for the kings of England for about 700 years. It's also where the British crown jewels are stored. The fortress has the outer and inner walls and the White Tower, which is the big square castle in the middle. So the first thing we did was visit the crown jewels. The buildings here are a dining facility, including a cafe that's open to the public, and there's several museums as well as offices and housing for the approximately 40 soldiers that live here and guard the crown jewels. This building in front of us is where the crown jewels are stored. There's no filming in there, so I had to get images from the internet. The first thing I noticed when looking at the crown jewels and the vestments was that nothing really looks Christian. It's all Druid and pagan. You don't normally see Christian maces or Druid fighting staffs and swords. So there's King Charles with the scepter, which has one of the largest diamonds in the world on the end of it. And there's the traditional mace being carried into the City of London. And this is the eagle used to hold the oil for the blessing of the king. So after the crown jewels, we had a nice tour with one of the yeoman wardens. He was a great guy. He chatted with us for a while after the tour was over. So our next stop was the chapel. The chapel is a working church. They have services there on Sundays. It also served over the years as the main graveyard for all the prisoners that were executed at the Tower of London. There's hundreds and hundreds of people buried here. They have several large mausoleums that are just full of bones. There's little plaques saying the last time they reorganized the bones was in the 1870s. And there's tombstones everywhere. Here's one from someone buried in 1674. There's the altar in the chapel with another mausoleum right next to the altar. And the flagstones on the floor are mostly headstones for graves. So after the chapel, we went to the White Tower, which was the final redoubt for the kings of England. It's currently used as a museum. For about 600 years, it was the armory for the army of the King of England. So they keep arms and armor on display. Next to the White Tower is a large poppy flower sculpture displayed both as a show of support for the service and sacrifice for the British Armed Forces. And that wooden staircase is an important feature. That was the last line of defense for the keep. If the walls were breached, they would kick the staircase away from the building and pour burning oil on it. And they have an unbelievable collection of medieval armor and arms. Displays of armor and arms just never seems to end. This book lists things that were checked into the Tower of London over about a 4-year period. The book's around 8 inches thick. And it's interesting how intricate and delicate plate mail is. Several of the statues were articulated, and they have little mechanisms showing how they would move. On the top level of the armory is a chapel, a nice little church. This one, of course, has no shortage of Christian symbols. And the modern firearms they have on display look like Counter-Strike skins, but they're just random weapons that were donated to the museum for some reason. They're very nice, although I'm sure getting shot with a $10,000 pistol is a lot like getting shot with a $200 pistol. And they made this very interesting dragon. I think they have about a dozen of every kind of cannon or mortar ever made. I'm not sure this place has ever actually thrown anything away. The place is just chock full of these huge old cannons and mortars. And they still have the old headsman's axe ready to get into action again. These were the yeoman wardens that are guarding the crown jewels. The two, of course, are ceremonial guards in front of the crown jewel exhibit. The next one we went to was the palace. It's a partially renovated medieval palace. Of course, all the stonework is original. This was where the king lived for hundreds of years. The palace is mostly full of these really interesting informational plaques and posters. And although they're interesting to read in person, they're very boring on video, so I'm going to skip them. The posters describe in some detail the development of the City of London, the development of the Tower, and what life was like in medieval London. Now, the palace consists of 3 towers and the walkways connecting the 3 towers. It's in some respects bigger and in some respects smaller than I was expecting. The grand room, which you first walk into, the reception area, it's a pretty good sized area. And if you wonder where all those stories of princesses living in towers comes from, well, this is where they're from. The bedroom's not all that big for a royal bedroom. They've recreated a lot of the furnishing and things that were in the bedroom originally. There's also a very small private chapel right off the bedroom. The throne room is smaller than I thought the throne room would be, and currently it's very plain and very bare, although the stonework is very ornate. It's actually a very pretty room. The throne is not what I was expecting. It's basically a nice upholstered chair, but it's just a chair. And those are really the only rooms in the palace that have been renovated, pretty much the bedroom and the throne room. The other levels are closed off. You can go up the steps and there's gates there. So the next thing we went to was the Salt Tower, which is where very important criminals or traitors were kept. Over the decades, many people waited for the executioner in the Salt Tower. It's just a short walk from the palace to the Salt Tower, along one of the battlements. We walked the perimeter of the fort on these battlements. Now, in the Salt Tower, the prisoners would pass their time by scratching things into the wall. So the walls are just covered with graffiti. Unfortunately, you can't really see it in this light. So what I tried doing was using my cell phone to shed a little light on the situation. That helped immensely. You can actually make out a lot of the scribblings and things on here. One of the really notable scratchings on the wall was an innkeeper who was accused of sorcery. He was imprisoned here and spent his time scratching a zodiac calendar in the walls with a number of occult symbols. So here's what he carved. I put it next to the note from the Zodiac killer, Ted Cruz. So there's the path we took. We walked the south battlements to the east battlements, and then in the north battlements. And there's various plaques and things all along there. Among the displays is this one commemorating the last people to be executed at the tower. They were German saboteurs during World War II. And that's the Tower of London, a very nice museum.